So here's my current practice. This is what I'm doing on Thursday when I get back to Perth. I'm up to this stage with my cyclists. Okay? So education. A number of workshops that are just education. Okay? Now, I've gone through the model in a different way. This is more the way I would present it to the athletes. It's a little bit fancier in terms of the colours. It's got nicer text, fonts, it's those kind of things. Okay? But I don't actually do this. I actually talk these three things. Okay? Because we can talk, technically the model's called the hexaflex. Somebody went, hey, we can simplify this into a triflex. But I talk about AAA. Be aware, so know what's going on for you at the moment, and be in the moment. Be aware. Accept whatever it is that's going on for you, just accept that that's the way it is. If you have a thought, right, it's just a thought. The thought that I can do well is exactly the same as I don't think I can do well. They're just both thoughts, but neither of them change what your leg does unless you allow it. So just accept the thought occurred and move on to focus on what you have to do, the action. Take action. With the cyclists, for instance, so one of the sports I work with quite a lot is cycling. Cycling is about pain. Right? The Olympic event, the key Olympic event, well, there's two on the track. There's an omnium, which is one rider doing all the events, and there's a group of riders doing one event, team pursuit. There's some tactical elements to the bunch racing, but outside of that, it's about how much pain am I willing to tolerate. It's 4 minutes of going flat out around a track, round and round and round. Right? I have to tolerate the pain. Well, the pain is just something over here. I just have to accept it. If I am willing to endure that pain, then I'm willing to be good. At 4 minutes, the race stops, 3 minutes 50 if you're good, and the pain goes away. Maybe it's replaced with something called elation, but even if it's not, the physical pain goes away. So am I willing to just accept that I am going to hurt for 4 minutes to engage in being exactly what I can be? And that would be a language I would talk in a lot to athletes, about willingness to endure, willingness to be uncomfortable, being comfortable being uncomfortable. The person who is willing to accept more pain on a daily basis at training, they get the greatest gains. When I go into the gym and there's 3 of our young cyclists lined up, I only look at the faces because that tells me how much pain they're in. And I know which one is the best. Because the one doing the cycling test, the 20-minute test that we do, who's looking reasonably comfortable, it's not going to be him. He might not be the worst cyclist, he might not have the worst capacity, but the guy who's looking the worst is probably the one who's making the best gains every day because he keeps putting himself into that position where he does the highest level of training, the action. So, educate, and then I ask them to do an application. So this is a lady called Dr. Shona Erskine. Shona is an organisational psychologist, but she's also a professional dancer. Okay. So on Thursday, I have my cycling group, and we are going to go and dance from 9 till 5. And they're going to be asked to put on a dance performance for an hour at the end of the day, a 45-minute performance. Now, physically, it's probably not going to stretch them, but holy dooly, are they going to be uncomfortable. For starters, it's mostly boys. And we're going to ask them to dance together. So when I go back to here, they're going to have lots of thoughts and emotions that are not comfortable, that are going to ask them to do things that they don't really want to do. So I'm going to have to sell them on something of value. I'm going to have to sell them a reason to do this activity. And then they're going to have to get past their uncomfortable emotions and their awareness by doing some of this, staying in the moment. Every time I think about the performance at the end of the day, I'm not engaged in what I'm doing now so that they can do the committed action. So my things where I apply and the second bit, is I'm going to push them into places not in their sport, but where they're going to be uncomfortable. A week later, they're going to do a high ropes course, and it's going to have one. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a better photo, but this is a telegraph pole that you climb up, and you stand on top. And these things are brilliant. Has anybody done one? Pamper pole? Yeah? If you're on the top and you're a bit nervous, that pole just accentuates, and then they're not as solid as you might think. They don't break, but they do move. And the only way to get it to stop shaking is to really be able to stand still and relax a bit. If you get tense, it just tells us. So the only way to be successful is to be able to manage, to stay calm. You can have some thoughts still, but you need to control your body. And then you jump and try and grab that thing. And fortunately, you have well, not everybody's going to make it, so you're tied in. You then also have to, and this is what becomes interesting, is you then have to let go of the handle to get back down and trust the person on the ground is going to drop you on the ground because you're still up high, but there's no way out other than just to let go and have somebody lower you down. So again, they're going to get some uncomfortable feelings and some unhelpful thoughts, and they're going to have to manage those things. Because one of the things I can't do, I cannot replicate the Olympics or the World Junior Championships in our cycling track. Okay? I can do some things to make things pressured. I can give them activities, and this is one I would do, potentially, is you have, at 3 o'clock, you are going to do an IP. And if your individual pursuit, depending on how old you are and what gender, so many laps of the track by yourself as fast as you can. If you can't hit that time, that's the end of your training session. You'll be out. If you can hit the time, you can stay and train. So there's adding some pressure, but it's not World Junior Championships pressure. Okay? So you can do some things, but it's not the same. Whereas doing things like this, in a different context, I can create a different level of intensity. The dance is going to be fascinating. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. There's some other activities I've kind of got, and we're just talking about a centre of outdoor education kind of thing down here. One of the things I have looked at is Stirling Rages has an abseiling spot, I think, where you can do 250 metre abseil, multi-pitch. I don't know if anybody's done it, but that looks freaky. If that doesn't scare the bejesus out of some of my athletes, nothing will. The other thing we're going to do potentially is helicopter underwater escape training. So you're nodding. Have you done it? Yeah? Uncomfortable? Good. I'm definitely a signer. So in this, you have this capsule that kind of resembles a helicopter. Windows, you're kitted up for it. But then you're strapped in with your seatbelt. You plunged underwater. While you're underwater, you have to manage to unplug, punch out a window and climb out to safety. But you can also roll it upside down underwater, so it becomes quite disorienting and adds bubbles. And while they don't do this in the actual training, because we won't be doing it for this certification, we could hold people down there for longer, so they have to breath hold for longer. Or we could blindfold them so they can't actually see anything, they just have to do it entirely by feel. But we can create this to make it pretty uncomfortable. We'll also potentially do free diving. Okay? So the only way to be successful at free diving is to be able to deal with sensations in your body, because when you try and hold your breath, you get some interesting sensations. You get the thoughts that, wow, I need to take a breath, and those kind of things. So these type of activities are the way we'll apply it to help them learn. And then the third bit, personalisation. Okay, the third bit is to say, all right, now you've done all this stuff, what's your stuff? And that'll be individual. What's the stuff that really gets you? What's the bit that you really struggle with? What's the typical thoughts you have that you need to unhook from? Now you've got some skills, now we can really apply it. And I don't know exactly what that will look like yet. But I know the skills, I know the techniques, but I don't know exactly what all of the athletes are going to say. But it requires a bit of knowing the athlete, and it requires the athlete to know themselves and be honest. And that sometimes is the hardest thing for an athlete to do, is actually own up to their weird thought that they don't want to admit to. Last night, asked one of the swimmers, what's the most important thing to do at the start of the race? What's the first thing you got to do? Not fall in. No, he was okay. But if my understanding is correct from a colleague, Ian Thorpe had a pretty similar thought when he was standing on the blocks before major races. Just don't fall in, don't fall in. But it wouldn't really be that acceptable for the Olympic gold medalist, world champion, to be saying, oh yeah, my big thing is I try not to fall in on the box. You've got to present a better image. So for some of my young male athletes, particularly, it's hard for them to know that kind of stuff. So, over to you.